So congratulations to all of the nominees, but I think obviously a special congratulations to Brazil is in order for sweeping the student awards. To provide some context for those of you who don't eat, sleep, and breathe the student movement for liberty like some of us, some of you might have heard that the president in Brazil is undergoing or close to undergoing impeachment proceedings. What you might not have heard is that this is largely due to a political movement started by people in their teens and early 20s, explicit young libertarians who began taking to the streets and organizing demonstrations that began to attract millions, tens of millions of individuals across the country calling for reform, not just over the corruption scandal that began, but demanding economic freedom writ large. You can actually see YouTube videos of people chanting for the national oil company to be privatized, being led by a 19-year-old libertarian named Kim Kataguiri and his partners. Honestly, Estudantes pela Liberdade, you're doing incredible work spurring this movement and everything going on there. Congratulations on all you're doing. And now, it's my honor to introduce the great political satirist, P.J. O'Rourke. I opened up by talking about this election cycle, and I don't think there's any better way to describe what's happening and the dangers of it than to quote PJ's perhaps famous line, "Giving money and power to government is like giving whiskey and car keys to teenage boys." He is a renowned correspondent that covers politics, economics, culture, and current events, and he was called the funniest writer in America by both Time and the Wall Street Journal. Please help me welcoming to the stage, P.J. O'Rourke.
Well, I'm honored. I'm honored to be speaking to Students for Liberty, but I'm also a little daunted. You are studying the most important subject in public life and in private life. You are scholars of individual freedom, savants of personal dignity, and mavens of private responsibility, and I just make fun of things. Okay? Frankly, I fear that I'm too stupid to be addressing you. But in fairness to myself, I'm not just stupid. I am an expert in stupidity. I am a political reporter. I may not be qualified to speak to you about anything intelligent, but I am perfectly qualified to talk to you about politics, in particular this 2016 U.S. presidential race, which has been an anathema to everything we stand for as lovers of liberty. Who are these jacklegs, highbinders, wire pullers, Monty Banks, swellheads, bunkum spigots, boodle artists, four-flushers, and animated spittoons offering themselves as worthy of America's highest office? I mean, do they take the voters for fools? Well, of course they do. Of course they do. But are they also deluded? Are they also insane? Are they receiving radio broadcasts on their teeth fillings telling them that they would be good presidents? You know, I mean, Cruz, Kasich, Rubio, Carson, Clinton, Sanders, and Trump. That is not a list of presidential candidates. That's the worst law firm in the world, you know? That's a law firm that couldn't get Caitlyn Jenner off on a charge of Bruce Jenner identity theft. You know? I mean, has the office of the presidency diminished in stature until it attracts only the leprechauns of public life? Or have our politicians shrunk until none of them can pass the carnival test? You must be taller than the clown to run for president. You know? When this presidential race began, when mastodons roamed the earth, it seemed as if the two candidates would be Clinton and Bush. And I trembled for my country. I mean, members of the electorate would go into the ballot booth, see the Bush and Clinton names, and think to themselves, gosh, I'm getting forgetful. I did this already. And they'd leave without marking the ballot. Voter turnout would be 6%, you know. Oh, the shuttle from the old age home would send a few senile Republicans to the polls, and a Democratic National Committee bus would collect some derelicts from Skid Row. And we would have the first president of the United States elected by a franchise limited to sufferers from Alzheimer's disease and drunken bums. Mm-hmm. What happened to Jeb Bush, anyway? You know, he had it all. He had it all. I mean, he's young for a Republican, a Phi Beta Kappa, a successful businessman, and a former governor of Florida, where balloting, incompetence, and corruption are vital to the GOP. Plus, he was rolling like a dirty dog in campaign contributions, you know? And then it all went wrong. And Hillary, I mean, challenged by someone who sounds like a 74-year-old Abby Hoffman, you know? I mean, if Abby Hoffman had an operation to have his sense of humor removed, I mean, he could get the nomination. You know, Bernie Sanders could get the nomination. Bernie Sanders, who I think of as basically as Donald Trump for people who are still living in their parents' basement, you know? I mean, he could get the nomination because, you know, at this point in the 2008 election cycle, Barack Hussein Obama, he was about as likely to be nominated for president as some small-time community organizing junior senator from Illa wherever, you know, with a name like somebody who tried to sabotage an airplane with an underpants bomb, you know? I mean, speaking of airplanes, Hillary carries more baggage than the Boeing she used as Secretary of State, visiting every country that later blew up in her face in her quest to fulfill the mission of the U.S. Secretary of State, which is to accumulate frequent flyer miles. On the upside, she is familiar with the White House. I mean, she knows where the extra toilet paper is stored and where the spare key to the nuke missile launch briefcase is hidden. It's a Truman balcony, second pillar from the right. Anyway, Hillary's competitor for the Democratic nomination, the screwy, kablooey commander of the Vermont Kong, Senator Bernie Sanders. A socialist. He's a socialist. He says so himself. Socialist. I mean, he thinks stealing is a good thing, you know? He's going to take your flat screen TV and give it to a family of pill addicts in the backwoods of Vermont, you know? Bernie says he wants to make America more like Europe. Great idea. I mean, Europe has had a swell track record, just a terrific track record for 100 years now, ever since Archduke Ferdinand's car got a flat in Sarajevo in 1914, you know? Make America more like Europe. Where do you even go to get all the Nazis and commies and 90 million dead people that it would take to make America more like Europe, you know? Now, meanwhile, over on the Republican side, the GOP has had candidates like my house has squirrels in the attic. I mean, Dr. Carson, okay, Dr. Ben Carson, soft-spoken gentleman who rose from a background of social adversity and economic deprivation that makes Barack Obama look like the lost Bush brother. So Carson goes to Yale, he goes to the University of Michigan Law School, or Medical School, excuse me, and completes his residency at Johns Hopkins, becoming the hospital's youngest ever director of pediatric neurosurgery at age 33 in 1984. Dr. Carson's a genius. First surgeon to successfully separate Siamese twins cojoined at the head. And this is why I am asking Dr. Carson to quit running for president. Please just quit running for president, get back to work. Back to work, damn it. I mean, we need you, Ben. You know, George W. and Jeb's heads might get cojoined. You know, I mean, true, they're not twins, but the Bush family is inbred, and freakish things can happen as a result of inbreeding. Or, Dr. Carson, you could be removing Donald Trump's ruptured silicone brain implant that is endangering Americans everywhere, you know? Now, of course, my personal faint hope was Rand Paul. At least Rand believes the federal government should obey the rule, mind your own business and keep your hands to yourself. I call it the mind your own business, keep your hands to yourself. I call it the Bill and Hillary Clinton principle. Hillary, mind your own business. Bill, keep your hands to yourself. You know? Now, unfortunately, Rand can't get the Republican nomination. Could have gotten the Republican nomination because Rand isn't just a Republican, he's also a libertarian. Now, libertarianism appeals to people who are fiscal conservatives and social liberals. Fiscal conservative and social liberal. That means they want to get high and have sex while saving money. And who does not? But what Republican is going to admit to that in public? So Rand was out, you know. Now, I admit I liked Ted Cruz's flat tax idea, the same wildly popular campaign pledge that put Steve Forbes in the White House in 1996. And usually I am, like Cruz, I am opposed to stricter gun controls. But Cruz told radio host Hugh Hewitt, and I quote, the simple fact is the overwhelming majority of violent criminals are Democrats. So maybe gun purchase background checks should include a question about party affiliation. Cruz seems a little clueless on foreign policy. I don't think carpet bombing ISIS will work. Didn't they pretty much invent the carpet over there? Also, Ted, stop the anti-immigrant rants. I am 68 years old. What am I supposed to do? Raise my own children? You know, Cruz is a cultural conservative. He's strongly opposed to gay rights, drug law reform, everything like that. Cruz is still fighting the culture wars. He's up on the front lines, bravely firing away without noticing that the other side has gone home to celebrate victory with legalized marijuana at same-sex wedding receptions, you know? Plus, I've got teenage daughters. I mean, if abortion laws need any tweaking, it's this. The woman gets to decide what to do with the baby, and I get to decide what to do with the boyfriend. I guess if I really had to, I could make a case for Marco Rubio. Okay, what's good about Rubio is, don't rush me here. Marco Rubio is 168 years younger than Hillary Clinton in dog years. Dogs are all we've got this election cycle, so it's a fair measure, okay? Marco Rubio is a Washington outsider. Well, actually, he's a U.S. Senator, but he has missed a lot of Senate votes, and I assume that was because during the voting, Rubio was outside Washington, okay? So that counts. Marco Rubio has an impressive legislative record. Despite being a Washington outsider and missing a lot of Senate votes, Marco Rubio has shown bold leadership, introducing vital legislation in Congress, an amendment to H.R. 1735 to authorize a land exchange at Whiting Field Naval Air Station in Whiting, Florida. S1343, a bill to require the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to improve hurricane forecasting. S1403, Florida Fisheries Improvement Act, to name just a few of the important Senate bills, amendments, and resolutions bearing Marco Rubio's name. Marco Rubio gets the Latino vote in Cuba. If Cuba had political polls, Marco Rubio would be polling far ahead of Raul Castro in the Cuban presidential election if Cuba had presidential elections. And then there is John Kasich placing fourth in the GOP South Carolina primary. If you're wondering, just idly wondering what's wrong with the Republican Party, Kasich's what you should be wondering about. I mean, here's this very popular governor of Ohio, state that is as purple as Barney the dinosaur, you know. Barney's friends are big and small. They come from lots of places, and they all hate each other, you know. Ohio's a microcosm of American conflict. You know, it's like labor versus management, nativists versus immigrants, blacks versus white, Occupy Akron versus the 1%, you name it, you know. They all hate each other, but they don't hate John Kasich, you know. So no wonder he's polling in single digits. I mean, the GOP is in no damn mood for competent, experienced politicians with broad popular appeal. So, what I'm doing, well, I'm supporting Donald Trump. Because I'm supporting Donald Trump because of something the great political satirist H.L. Mencken said. Mencken said, democracy is the theory that the common people know what they want and deserve to get it good and hard. Now, Trump's chief domestic policy will be to be on TV. As president, Trump will get to be on TV all the time, 24/7. You know, presidents are entitled to that. But this might not be all bad. I mean, just spraying his hair during commercial breaks is going to keep Trump too busy to push any other bird brain entitlement programs the way some presidents have, you know? And Trump can yell, "You're fired," all he wants. I mean, it will make for a healthy turnover in Trump cabinet appointees such as Ivanka Trump and Dennis Rodman and Larry King and Vince McMahon. Plus, Trump understands the American economy. He will push America's economic growth the same way he has pushed his own with bad debt, bad debt, bad debt, and more bad debt, you know? So we Americans, we love debt. You know, average American household debt is now more than $225,000. Now, Trump has restructured $3.5 billion in business debt and restructured $900 million in personal debt, restructured being the Trump way of saying he didn't pay it. And we Americans know a leader when we see one. You know? Then imagine Trump's foreign policy. Here's a guy who seems to be under the illusion that he's about 10 times richer than he actually is, who believes President Obama was born in Kazakhstan to the Queen of Sheba, and who thinks childhood vaccination caused the movie Rain Man, you know? Now, Russia, China, Iran, ISIS, the Taliban, and Hamas will be paralyzed with fear. Who knows what this lunatic will do, you know? Well, what he'll do is build hundreds of Trump casinos, Trump hotels, and Trump resorts in Moscow, Beijing, Tehran, Raqqa, Kandahar, and the Gaza Strip. And then all of them will go bankrupt, the way the Trump Taj Mahal, Trump Plaza Hotel, and Trump Entertainment Resorts did. Trump will leave Russia trying to palm off eastern Ukraine on angry bondholders and China auctioning distressed property in the Spratly Islands, you know? Hell, this may work, you know? No, it won't. We live in a democracy, okay? We live in a democracy ruled by the people. 50% of people are below average in intelligence, mathematical fact. It explains everything about democracy. Now, I don't mean to disparage democracy. Democracy is the best political system. And we don't want to live in a country ruled only by the best and the brightest, and that would be too much like being married to Nancy Pelosi. So we have to keep supporting democracy. Not that I am happy with democratically elected President Obama. He raised taxes. I don't like that. Of course, he raised taxes just on rich people. I do like that. Then I read the fine print. Turns out I'm rich. You know, we have two parties in this country. We have got the stupid party and the silly party. Now, as I mentioned, I'm stupid, so I usually vote for the stupid party. I vote Republican because Republicans have fewer ideas. But not few enough. Okay? Homeland Security, the Iraq War, No Child Left Behind. What if they deserve to be left behind? You know, I mean, what if they deserve a smack on the behind? You know, I mean, nationwide testing program to determine whether kids are what? Dumb? I've got kids. Kids are dumb. You know, I mean, now the Democrats say government can make us richer, smarter, taller, with a better health insurance policy and 10 strokes off our golf game. You know. Republicans say government doesn't work, and then they get elected and they prove it, you know? The Democrats say we don't know what's wrong with capitalism, but we can fix it. The Republicans say there's nothing wrong with capitalism and we can fix that. Now, some people think politicians don't accomplish anything because of partisan political bickering. No, we want them to bicker. The two most frightening words here in Washington are bipartisan consensus. Bipartisan consensus, that's like when my doctor and my lawyer agree with my wife that I need help. You know? People say, oh, America is so polarized. No, we're not. No, we're not. We're just split on some issues. I mean, half of America wants more social services that other people will pay for, and half of America is other people. You know? Bipartisan consensus, in fact, this happens all the time because all politicians, Democrats and Republicans alike, want government to solve every one of the world's problems, from curing cancer to getting the Kardashians off TV. You know? They want government to do this. Government can't run a post office. I mean, government has trouble figuring out where mail goes, and mail has our address right on the front of it. Government solving all of the world's problems. This is expensive. And it's not just that I don't want to pay more taxes personally. It's the big picture that gets me. America's gross domestic product's about $14 trillion a year. America's combined federal, state, and local government spending is $5.8 trillion a year. That's 40% of GDP. Government is spending 40% of our money. Ought to be enough. I mean, if I'm giving my college kid 40% of my income as an allowance, should hold her till the end of the semester, you know? Government is spending 40% of our money. Is government doing 40% of our work? Is government doing 40% of our laundry? You know, if we go out for a cocktail, is government tending bar, making sure that 4 out of 10 margaritas are on the house, you know? When my spouse is feeling romantic and I'm tired, does government come over to my house and take care of foreplay, you know? Actually, when Bill Clinton was president, could have happened. You know, take an example of government spending that has been around forever, Social Security. There's no money in the Social Security Trust Fund, and there never was. Money is a government IOU. The government cannot create a trust fund by saving its own IOUs, any more than I was able to create a trust fund for myself by writing, I get a chunk of money when I turn 21 on a piece of paper. Social Security is just such a piece of paper, except it says I get a chunk of money when I turn 65. The government promises. Consult American Indians for a further discussion of government promises, you know? You know, politicians work themselves into a lather proving the benefits of this kind of government spending. And you know, using that politician logic, I can prove anything. I can prove that shooting convenience store clerks stimulates the economy. See, jobs are created in the high-paying domestic manufacturing sector at gun and ammunition factories. Additional emergency medical technicians, security guards, healthcare providers, and morticians are hired. The unemployment rate is lowered as job seekers fill new openings on convenience store night shifts. And money stolen from convenience store cash registers stimulates the economy, where stimulus is most needed in low-income neighborhoods where the people who shoot convenience store clerks go to buy their crack. I mean, considering all the good it does, I am simply flabbergasted that everyone in the House and Senate isn't smoking crack and shooting convenience store clerks this very minute, you know? Then there is the problem of political corruption. Political corruption is a law of economics. When buying and selling are controlled by voting, the first things that get bought and sold are votes. Simple as that. Now, let me give you an example of how politics leads to corruption. In agriculture, a business that has been up to its bib overalls in politics since the first Thanksgiving dinner kickback to the Indians for subsidizing Pilgrim maize production with fish head fertilizer grants. Right now we've got a 5-year the 2014 federal farm bill, 5-year farm bill, is going to cost American taxpayers $191.2 billion. Now that is not including the $764.8 trillion that the bill spends on food stamps. And all I'm talking about is $191.2 billion worth of crop insurance subsidies, agricultural price supports, and millionaire farmer income guarantees. $191.2 billion, that's more than 10 times the gross domestic product of Afghanistan. For what just the farming part of the farm bill will cost, we could have stopped fighting the Taliban and just bought Afghanistan from them. You know? Now, like most Americans these days, my actual experience with agriculture is it's limited to raising marijuana plants under grow lights in my off-campus apartment about half a century ago. But I did once help artificially inseminate a cow. I had this half-baked friend, total city slicker, who, out of the blue, decides that he's going to raise cattle. So he buys a farm, and he buys some cows, and I am visiting him at the farm when it is time for the cows to get in a family way. Now, this is not done like I would have thought with a cow and a bull in a heart-shaped stall and some Celine Dion CDs, you know. Turns out breeding cattle is like teenage pregnancy, except a lot more so, because not only isn't the bull around to help raise the calf, the bull's not even there to get the cow knocked up. And what happens instead is there's this liquid nitrogen thermos bottle full of frozen bull semen, and let's not even think about how they get that. And then there's this device that looks like a giant hypodermic needle. So anyway, my friend got this real farmer, Pete, to come in and actually do the honors. So while I'm holding the cow's head and my friend is holding the cow's middle, Pete takes this freezing cold syringe thing and inserts it into a very personal and private place of the cows. And then what Pete does is he sticks his arm into an even more personal and private place of the cows, all the way up to the elbow. Now, Pete does this not to get on the internet with a pornographic website, but so that he can feel the tip of the inseminator tube through the cow's intestine wall and guide the tip into the uterus. This is a pretty gruesome thing to watch, and since I was up at the cow's other end, I'm glad to say I did not watch it. But I will tell you one thing. I will never forget the look on that cow's face. It was the same look that I got on my face for the same reason when I read the 2014 Farm Bill. But I don't want to leave you tonight. I don't want to leave you tonight thinking there's just greedy factory farmers or Bernie Sanders who give in to the temptation to ask the government to solve their problems, especially their economic problems. The whole electorate gets confused about the role that politics should play in economics, and this is because the political system and the economic system send contradictory messages. Economics sends us the message, I better get rich. I better not be poor. I better make more money than other people. Well, politics sends us the message, some people make more money than other people. Some people are rich and other people are poor. We better close that income inequality gap. It's so unfair. Well, I'm here tonight to speak in favor of unfairness because I've got a teenage daughter. And she is always saying, that's not fair. 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 One time I just snapped. I snapped. And I said, you're cute. That's not fair. You know? Your family's pretty well off. That's not fair. You were born in America. That's not fair. I said, darling, you had better get down on your knees and pray to God that things don't start getting fair for you, you know? To hell the income inequality. I mean, what we need is more income, even if it means a bigger gap, because wealth is not a pizza where if I have too many slices, you have to eat the Domino's box. Wealth Wealth is not a zero-sum game. In a free market with property rights and rule of law, there are no losers when somebody gets rich. Politics promises equality, everyone the same size, everyone the same weight, everyone the same income, everyone with the same vacation. 319 million people headed to Disney World, right over spring break. I mean, wait time for Space Mountain is now 1,000 years. Using politics to create economic fairness is a sin. It's a sin. The Bible is very clear about this. Now, not that I agree with certain Republicans about God being involved in politics, and I'm talking to you, Ted Cruz. No. My attitude on that matter is that observe politics in America. Observe politics down through history. Observe politics around the world. Does it look like God is involved? No, that would be the other fellow who is the political activist. But in one particular sense, I do get my politics from the Bible, specifically from the 10th commandment. Now, the first 9 commandments, they concern theological principles and social law. Thou shalt not make graven images, steal, kill, etc. Fair enough. But then there's the 10th commandment. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Now, here are God's basic rules about how we should live, brief list of sacred obligations and solemn moral precepts, and right at the end of it is don't envy your buddy's cow, especially the one I helped artificially inseminate. How did that make the top 10? Why would God, with just 10 things to tell Moses, choose as one of them jealousy about livestock? And yet you think about how important that commandment is to liberty. To liberty in a community, to liberty in a nation, to liberty in a democracy, to liberty in the economic system, to all of that. If you want a mule, if you want a pot roast, if you want a cleaning lady, don't whine about what the people across the street have. Go get your own, 10th commandment sends a message to Congress, sends a message to the White House, it sends a message to all of those political candidates, and it is a message about their promises for stimulus packages and bailouts, for regulation, redistribution, for subsidies, entitlement programs, for tax borrow and spend policies, and every other governmental form of fairness, and the message is clear and concise: go to hell. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, PJ O'Rourke. Before we leave tonight, I'd once again like to thank everyone who made tonight possible. Our host committee, Park Bostrom, Derwood and Joanna Chase, Louis Giavecchi, Arthur Danchik, Dan Grossman, Ethel May Humphreys, David and Corinne Peterson, John Coonsey, Don and Julie Smith, Victor Sparandeo, Tito Tedamante, and John Utley. I also want to thank again our sponsors, our top sponsors for this year's International Students for Liberty Conference: Cato, the Charles Koch Institute, the Smith Family Foundation, Young Americans for Liberty, Alumni for Liberty, the Atlas Network, and the Institute for Humane Studies. I hope you all enjoyed this evening. I hope you all enjoy the rest of this conference. And most importantly, I hope you all will join us again next year at the 10th Annual International Students for Liberty Conference back here at the Marriott Wardman from February 17th to 19th, 2017. As amazing as this year is, the 10th ISFLC is going to be epic. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.